People think cleaning daily rental apartments is just changing sheets and wiping counters, but it feels more like walking into finished chapters of strangers' lives. By the time I arrive, the laughter, arguments, hookups, breakdowns, and lies are already over, leaving only smells, stains, and small clues the photos never planned to show. I used to think my job was simple damage control for weekends and work trips, but lately it feels like the buildings themselves have started remembering who passes through. This story begins on a Tuesday night when my phone buzzed with a new booking notification I had never seen before, from a unit the app insisted did not officially exist. The host's name was hidden behind initials instead of a photo, and the address field just said Mirror Block, top floor, key in box C, like a secret dare in plain sight. I checked my map and saw nothing called Mirror Block, only a narrow street of older concrete towers I knew well, each one pretending to be more modern than it really was. Still, the pay rate glowed higher than usual, tagged with a rush bonus and a note that said, "Urgent reset required after silent checkout. Please confirm you work alone." Most cleaners I know would call that a red flag and decline, but unpaid bills turn red flags into maybe laters, and I have more overdue notices than I have free evenings. When I accepted the job, a new message appeared instantly on the platform chat, like whoever was on the other end had been staring at the screen waiting just for me. "Vocar'll see 2 identical entrances when you arrive," it read. "Take the left door, not the right. No matter what you hear, you must ignore the other one completely." I stared at those instructions long enough for my reflection in the dark phone screen to look like someone else's, then told myself rich weirdos always come with conditions. Half an hour later, I was standing on a quiet side street, staring up at 2 towers built so close together their balconies almost shook hands across the narrow gap of air. The left building had a cracked intercom, a dead plant on the windowsill, and metal mailboxes scarred with years of keys. The right one looked identical, only cleaner, sharper. Same number of floors, same arrangement of balconies, same pattern of lighted windows, as if someone had copied and pasted the building with a slight upgrade filter on top. The key boxes were mounted between the 2 entrance doors like a row of gray teeth, labeled A, B, C, D. Only box C had a tiny red sticker shaped like a half-peeled circle. I opened it and found a single brass key, old-fashioned but recently polished, wrapped in a folded note that smelled faintly of bleach and cheap floral detergent. The note was written in tight, careful handwriting. "Top floor, Unit 7L, do not approach 7R. If you see anyone there who looks like you, leave immediately without cleaning." My first thought was that this was some kind of bizarre prank. Another host who thought cleaners signed up to be part of their immersive art projects for free. Still, the key felt real in my hand, solid and cold. The small scratches along its edge exactly like the keys to every other life I stepped into for a few hours at a time. I chose the left door because the instructions said so, but also because the right entrance bell was cracked, its little ring of light flickering like a nervous eye. The stairwell inside smelled of damp concrete and frying onions, the universal perfume of old city buildings, but there was a faint sweetness under it I couldn't name. As I climbed, I passed pairs of doors on each landing, L and R, twins facing each other with the same doormats, the same locks, the same scuffs in slightly different places. On the 3rd floor, I heard a TV murmuring behind one of the R doors, some crime show laugh track leaking into the stairwell like watered-down tension. By the 5th floor, the air felt thinner, quieter, the kind of quiet that has already decided you are an intruder and is waiting to see what you do next. When I finally reached the top, the corridor was lit by a single buzzing strip light, painting everything in a sickly blue that made the doors look more like props than exits. Unit 7L's door stood on my left, beige, chipped at the bottom, with a faded sticker of a cat near the handle. 7R on the right looked almost identical, but but without any sticker. I slipped the key into 7L's lock and felt the resistance of old metal, then the satisfying turn that says, "You are allowed in for now, but only for as long as you behave." As the door opened, something made me glance back at 7R, at its blank, waiting face. For a heartbeat, I had the strong impression someone inside was holding their breath. I stepped into 7L and shut the door behind me, letting my nose judge the room the way it always does before my eyes finish catching up with the first impression. The air was stale with cooked tomatoes, cheap wine, and the sour edge of faded perfume, wrapped around a deeper smell underneath that reminded me of dust after rain. The living area looked like any other short-term rental. Neutral sofa, tiny table, generic art print of a city skyline that probably did not match this city at all. The bed in the open sleeping area was unmade. Sheets tangled like someone had fought a long, losing battle with the idea of sleep and finally escaped before dawn. There were 2 glasses on the counter, one with lipstick on the rim and one without, standing close together like they still remembered the hands that had held them. As I moved further in, I noticed something odd. Every mirror surface in the unit was covered with a thin layer of translucent tape, crisscrossed like faint spiderwebs. The bathroom mirror, the little one over the dresser, even the black screen of the television all had strips of tape across them, dulling their reflections into gray shadows. It wasn't the messy kind of tape job you see when someone is renovating. This looked intentional, careful, as though the guest had been trying to blur themselves out of existence. I peeled one corner on the dresser mirror, more out of reflex than curiosity, and saw my face appear sharper beneath it, eyes ringed in the tired smudges of long shifts. The tape above my reflection had words written along the edge in smudged blue ink, letters almost lost beneath my own faint ghost in the glass. I leaned closer until my breath fogged the surface and made the message readable. "It watches better when things are clear. I need them messy so I can leave without being copied." The sentence was wrong in the way truth can sometimes be wrong. Too specific, too scared, the kind of thought you only write down when your brain has started losing other battles. I checked the bathroom next, flipping on the light with my elbow, expecting mold or stray hair or some normal little horror of stranger hygiene waiting in the corners. The tiles were clean, the sink only faintly stained, the drain free of hair. The shower curtain hung still, no creepy reddish stains, nothing obviously broken or bleeding. But the mirror above the sink had more tape than any other surface, layered and overlapping, as if someone had kept adding strips every time they were forced to look up. Along the bottom edge, in the same cramped handwriting, another message ran like a subtitle. "Do not stand here at the same time as her. That is how the building learns your face." I stared at those words, my own features fractured behind the cloudy plastic, and felt the sudden urge to rip every piece of tape off and see exactly what the guest had been hiding from. Instead, I backed away, because fear is smarter than curiosity when you work alone at night in a place designed for people who never learn your last name. I started my usual routine to steady myself. Open windows, strip the bed, collect trash, stack dishes, give my muscles something repetitive to do while my mind sorted through the weirdness. As I pulled the sheets off the mattress, something thin and stiff fluttered to the floor, landing face down on the carpet like a small, defeated bird. It was a printed photo on cheap, glossy paper, the kind you get from instant kiosks in pharmacies, corners bent, image slightly overexposed in washed-out hallway light. I turned it over and felt my stomach drop in a slow, sickening arc. The photo showed the corridor outside this very unit, taken from the far end, facing the 2 doors on the top floor. On the left, I saw myself, or someone who looked almost exactly like me, standing in front of 7L, hand on the key, hair pulled back, same jacket, same tired tilt of the shoulders. On the right, in front of 7R, stood another version of me, hair loose, posture sharper, eyes fixed directly on the camera. as if she knew exactly when the shutter would snap. Between them, the corridor light looked split down the middle, brighter on the right, duller on the left, like two slightly different nights had been pressed into one frame. Someone had circled the figure on the right with a marker and written beneath it in shaky letters, "She unlocked the wrong door first. Now the building keeps the better copy." I dropped the photo like it had burned me and backed away until my calves hit the edge of the sofa, the room around me shrinking to the size of my own ragged breathing. I told myself it had to be a trick, cheap editing. Some bored guest using filters and duplicated images to freak out whoever came after them to clean up the performance. But the longer I stared at the picture lying on the carpet, the more I realized the worst part wasn't that there were two of me. It was that I didn't remember posing as either. The photo on the carpet felt heavier than paper, as if the image itself carried the weight of a moment I had lived but never remembered choosing to be part of. I reached for it with hesitation, fingertips brushing the glossy surface, half expecting the ink to be warm from a hand that didn't belong to anyone in the apartment. The two versions of me stared from opposite doors, one cautious and one certain, as if the building had divided my choices into separate bodies under its quiet supervision. I moved toward the window to breathe, hoping the outside world might anchor me, but the glass reflected my shape in a way that didn't match how I knew I was standing. The reflection tilted its head slightly later than I did, a small delay that felt intentional, like the version in the glass was listening to something behind me. I stepped back quickly, heart tightening, watching the reflection sharpen into clarity with a smile that didn't reach my own face in the dim apartment light. Before I could react, the light in the hallway outside the unit flickered, brightening and dimming in a steady pulse like a slow, mechanical heartbeat. I approached the door and pressed my ear against it, hearing faint footsteps echoing through the corridor, but moving too evenly to belong to any living neighbor. Peeking through the peephole, I saw the hall stretched unnaturally long, both doors at the far end seeming farther than they had been 5 minutes earlier. At the very edge of my vision, the door of Unit 7R had a faint vibration, not from wind or movement, but from something standing very still behind it. I whispered to myself that I should leave, walk down the stairs, forget the mirror tape and the photo, and quit the job without messaging the host at all. But when I grabbed the handle, the metal felt too warm, as if another hand had just released it seconds before mine reached out to claim the same spot. The warmth traveled into my palm, steady and confident, like an echo from a moment I had not participated in, but my body had supposedly lived. I unlocked the door quietly and opened it just enough to look into the corridor, keeping my breath low to avoid drawing attention to whatever was listening. The hallway was empty, yet the air felt denser, carrying a faint whispering sound like two people having a hushed conversation several floors below me. As I stepped out, the stairwell lights one floor down blinked on one after another, following a path upward as if something unseen was ascending toward me. Each light snapped awake with a sharp electric click, creating a pattern that felt less like illumination and more like a countdown steadily approaching my floor. I backed into the apartment quickly and closed the door, pressing my body against it, feeling the subtle vibration of unseen steps reaching the landing outside. The door did not rattle, yet the pressure against it felt real, like a presence standing close enough to listen to my heartbeat through the cheap wooden panel. I whispered, "Who's there?" even though I already sensed the answer wasn't a name but a place, a structure, a duplicate unit that wasn't supposed to exist at all. The moment I spoke, the reflection in the window behind me shifted again, this time turning its face fully toward mine with a frozen, unblinking stare. I felt the air change temperature instantly, cold spreading across the room like spilled water sliding into every corner without permission. The reflection raised its hand slowly, pressing its palm against the inside of the glass, leaving a faint print I could see even in the dim apartment light. but my own hand stayed at my side, trembling slightly, refusing to mirror the motion the way normal reflections do under any circumstances. I stepped closer, mesmerized and terrified, watching the figure in the window tilt its head in a way that felt like a practiced signature instead of natural curiosity. Suddenly, a soft knock came from the wall to my right, not from the hallway door, but from the shared partition with Unit 7R, rhythmic and cautious. Each knock came with a small vibration through the wall, as if the one knocking had bones heavier than a person or knuckles made of something denser than flesh. I approached the wall slowly, leaning in with my ear, hearing a faint whisper that sounded exactly like my own voice repeating the word, "open," over and over. The whisper wasn't coming from a throat. It was too smooth, too consistent, like a recorded loop playing from inside the wall itself without intention to stop. I backed away, dizzy with fear, feeling the weight of the apartment shift subtly, like the floorboards had adjusted to a new frequency of tension beneath me. The light above the bathroom flickered next, casting elongated shadows that seemed to lag behind my body a half-second longer than they should have. In the reflection of the TV screen, I saw myself walking backward, but the real me was standing completely still, breath caught in a slow, careful suspension. The backwards-moving version paused at the edge of the screen and pointed toward the bedroom door, slowly curling its finger as if inviting me to follow. I turned my head toward the bedroom, and to my horror, the door was now half open again, though I had closed it firmly only minutes earlier. Inside the room, the curtains swayed with a gentle motion that didn't match any airflow I could explain, rising and falling like lungs in quiet, rhythmic breathing. I stepped into the room cautiously, watching the shadows thicken around the edges of the walls as if the corners were absorbing more darkness than they should. The suitcase that had been zipped shut earlier now had its zipper halfway open, revealing a sliver of black fabric inside that hadn't been visible before. I knelt down gently, pulling the suitcase wider, uncovering another printed photo tucked beneath the clothes, hidden like a secret meant for me alone. This time the photo showed only 7R's door, but the door was wide open, darkness spilling from inside like a tunnel with no walls or ceiling. And standing at the threshold was a figure shaped exactly like me, shoulders squared, posture confident, staring directly at the camera with intent. Someone had written beneath it, "Only one of you leaves the floor tonight. The building chooses whichever version listens better." The lights in the hallway outside turned off all at once, plunging the top floor into a stillness so complete it felt staged. Then, from behind the door of 7R, I heard the lock click open with slow, deliberate certainty. Something on the other side inhaled, and the door began to open. The door of 7R opened with the slow patience of something that doesn't need speed to terrify, only the confidence of knowing you cannot outrun it. A narrow line of darkness unfolded first, not empty but textured, like shadows woven too tightly together to let any normal light slip through. I stood frozen as the opening widened, revealing a shape standing just behind the threshold, neither stepping out nor fully stepping back. The figure had my height and my outline, but its edges blurred slightly, drifting like smoke deciding which form it wanted to imitate. Its head tilted with the same rhythm my own had moments earlier, but delayed by a heartbeat, as if rehearsing memories that weren't entirely its own. I whispered a shaky hello, not expecting an answer, but needing to fill the growing silence before it swallowed the sound entirely. The figure responded by lifting its hand in a slow, weightless arc, mirroring the gesture I had refused to make in the window minutes before. For a second, I felt the air thicken, as though the room inhaled sharply, pulling both versions of me into a single breath it held too long. The figure's hand stopped midair, turning its palm outward toward me, fingers splayed like someone testing the thickness of invisible glass. Then the lights in the corridor dimmed, not flickering but lowering steadily, like an unseen hand slid a dimmer a few careful inches down. In that darkening glow, the figure sharpened, its outline becoming clearer, its posture straighter, as if darkness nourished whatever it was. It took one soundless step forward, and the shadows around its feet clung upward, lifting briefly like threads pulled from a torn carpet. The temperature dropped so suddenly that my breath turned visible, trembling in front of me before drifting toward the doorway of 7R. When the cold reached my hands, the figure lifted its head fully, revealing a face that resembled mine only in structure, not in expression. Its eyes were too still, too polished, reflecting not the corridor but a different space entirely, a space I felt I should have recognized. Before I could blink, the figure's mouth moved, forming shapes that looked like words but carried no sound, only the suggestion of speech. A chill crawled up my spine as I realized the shape of its silent sentences matched my own breathing pattern from minutes earlier. I stepped back, instinct pulling me away, and the figure reacted instantly, its body leaning forward like a marionette tugged by invisible strings. The motion was fluid yet wrong, too smooth, too controlled, as though gravity had been instructed to treat it differently than it treated me. Then the building groaned deeply beneath us, a low metallic sound that vibrated through the railings, the walls, and into my ribcage. The corridor lights brightened again for one brief moment, and in that flash I saw something behind the figure, something impossible. A second corridor stretched behind 7R, but inverted, as if the whole floor had been mirrored and bent backward into a darker dimension. Every door in that reverse hallway hung slightly open, each revealing a fragment of an apartment that resembled 7L in unsettling variations. In one doorway, a rug was missing. In another, the sofa faced the wrong direction. In a third, my jacket hung neatly on a hook I had never touched. The deeper the corridor stretched, the more distorted the details became, like the building was experimenting with alternate arrangements of reality. The figure stepped aside slightly, revealing the full view of this impossible space, offering it like an invitation or a warning. I wasn't sure which. My phone buzzed violently in my pocket, pulling my attention back toward my own world, its screen lighting my hand in pale blue panic. A new message appeared from an unknown sender. Do not look directly at her long. She stabilizes when you give her attention. The words hit me harder than the cold. They felt like instructions from someone who had survived this moment before and barely escaped. I looked up instinctively, catching the figure's stare again, and the air thickened instantly, pressing against my chest like an unseen weight. Her features, its features, became sharper, more defined, solidifying in real time as if sculpted from the attention I accidentally gave. I jerked my gaze away, staring at the carpet instead, and felt the pressure ease slightly, the air loosening enough for one shallow breath. The figure froze mid-formation, suspended in an unfinished state that made it look like both a real person and a faulty memory glitching. Another message appeared. If you break eye contact entirely, SHEDRIFTS. If you stare too long, SHE completes. Balance or run. I lifted my head a fraction and saw the creature, not her, shifting erratically, flickering like a corrupted frame skipping through seconds. The building groaned again, louder this time, followed by a deep vibration that moved up through the floor like a warning pulse. The inverted corridor behind the figure rippled, as though its walls were stretching to push something forward, something larger than both of us. I stepped back again, my heel hitting the threshold of 7L, and the apartment's air curled around me warmly, almost protectively. The figure reacted instantly, its entire posture snapping upright, as though the building itself had given it a command. It took another step, and the shadows around its ankles lifted once more, reaching forward like eager fingers desperate to anchor onto me. I realized then that the creature wasn't simply copying me. It was waiting to replace me, to step into the role the building had decided I no longer needed to fill. My phone buzzed again with one final message. Whatever you do, do not let her set foot inside 7L. Close the door before SHE finishes forming. The figure raised its head sharply, sensing the shift in my fear, and began gliding toward me, movements smoother and faster than before. For the first time, it made a sound, not a footstep, not a breath, but a low, vibrating hum that felt like it came from the walls themselves. I stumbled backward into 7L, gripping the door with both hands as the figure increased speed, its outline tightening into a more complete shape. Its hand, reached out, fingers stretching impossibly long, casting a shadow that crawled across the floor toward my shoes. I slammed the door with all my strength, the impact reverberating through the frame as the creature's shadow struck the wood with a muted thud. The door lock clicked into place, then clicked again, then once more, as though the building was reinforcing it out of its own strange, cautious logic. Behind the door, the hum continued for several long seconds before slowly fading, replaced by a silence so deep it felt like the floor exhaled. Only then did I notice the final message blinking on my phone screen. She is not the only version on this floor. You met the one that thinks faster yet. The corridor outside, 7L fell silent so completely that the building seemed to hold its breath, as if waiting to see which version of me would open the door next. I backed away slowly, letting the door's reinforced click settle into the frame, each one sounding like a decision sealed by something wiser than human hands. The lights in 7L dimmed to a low amber glow, leaving the corners of the apartment hazy, as though the walls were preparing to reshape themselves if I blinked too long. My phone vibrated again with another message from the unknown sender. If she stops forming, do not relax. It means her alternative is choosing a faster route. I didn't understand what alternative meant until the floorboards beneath my feet shifted slightly, producing a subtle tilt as if the level had changed dimensions. The building creaked with a metallic sigh, and for a moment the ceiling above me looked an inch lower, like the structure was bending closer to listen. I moved toward the hallway to check the peephole, but my reflection in the window appeared again, this time standing closer than physics should allow. Her outline was sharper now, no longer blurred, her expression neutral but aware, as if she were memorizing my movements to perfect the next imitation. When I blinked, the reflection blinked half a second late, delayed intentionally, like a reminder that she was not bound to my rhythm, only learning it. A soft tapping started from the wall between 7L and 7R, not a knock this time, but a coded pattern, like fingers drumming in a sequence I almost recognized. The taps repeated, then sped up, matching the pace of my heartbeat until I felt the rhythm sinking inside my chest like a forced metronome. I stepped away from the wall, and the tapping stopped instantly, as though whoever or whatever was behind it had lost interest in the wrong reaction. Then a new noise emerged from the corridor. Footsteps, fast and light, not heading towards 7L but circling the floor repeatedly in a tightening loop. Each lap grew quicker than the last, forming a spiral of sound around my unit. Closing in the way a hunter tests the perimeter before choosing its angle. My phone buzzed again with a new warning. That's not her. That's the version who doesn't need attention to stabilize. She completes from movement alone. The footsteps halted outside my door so abruptly that the silence punched against the wood like a held scream trapped between walls. Then a shadow appeared under the door, not tall like a person, but narrow and sharp, sliding back and forth with a predatory patience. I tried to stay perfectly still, but the shadow began matching my breath, expanding and shrinking in sync until it felt like it was inhaling for me. The handle twitched once, just enough to test resistance, sending a cold rush through my veins that made my hands shake uncontrollably. The unknown sender texted again. She senses motion. Do not move, do not speak. Wait until she picks a different door to try. But the handle twitched again, harder this time, and the shadow widened as if preparing to slide into the smallest crack the moment I made a mistake. I held my breath until my lungs screamed, waiting for any sign she'd move on. But the shadow froze in place like she knew exactly what advice I had been given. A faint metallic click echoed in the hallway, another door opening, followed by the soft squeal of hinges turning just out of sight. The shadow under my door thinned, then elongated toward the new noise, stretching away from 7L like liquid being drawn toward a stronger pull. I exhaled shakily as the footsteps drifted away, stopping in front of whichever door had just offered her a better chance at completion. When I checked the peephole, the corridor had changed again, slightly longer, slightly darker, with 3 doors instead of 2 on the right side. 7R now had 2 duplicates beside it, each with the same beige paint and identical scuff marks, as if the building had grown new doors to confuse me. My phone buzzed with a final message. The building is trying to choose. If you want to leave, you must pick the door that does not resemble yours. I stared at the new doors, each nearly identical, each humming faintly with something that didn't belong to tenants or electricity. Then I noticed one detail. The floor tile in front of the middle new door had no dust, as if something stood there often enough to disturb the surface. I stepped out of 7L cautiously, heart pounding, and closed the door behind me, the lock clicking once like a whispered goodbye. The corridor lights flickered, urging me to choose before the building changed its mind and rearranged the floor again into a maze. I ignored the clean tile and chose the far right door, the one with a faint crack near the bottom, imperfect enough to feel real in a place full of copies. I turned the knob and felt warm air rush out, human air, the kind that belongs to lived spaces rather than mirrored simulations of them. I stepped through without hesitating, letting the darkness swallow me for one suspended second before the stairwell lights burst on overhead. Behind me, the door clicked shut on its own, and when I turned back, the entire row of 7R doors, including the original, was gone. Only a smooth, uninterrupted wall remained, as if the building had erased the versions it didn't pick and sealed the remaining choice into silence. I ran down the stairs breathlessly until the street air hit me, cold and real, tasting like outside rather than any corridor that learns your face. When I checked my phone one last time, there was no unknown number in my message history, only a blank screen where warnings had once appeared. But in my photo gallery, a new image had been added, me standing at the bottom of the stairwell. Behind me, another version of me standing exactly one. But in my photo gallery, a new image had been added, me standing at the bottom of the stairwell. Behind me, another version of me standing exactly one step higher, and she was smiling. But in my photo gallery, a new image had been added, me standing at the bottom of the stairwell. Behind me, another version of me standing exactly one step higher, and she was smiling. But in my photo gallery, a new image had been added, me standing at the bottom of the stairwell. Behind me, another version of me standing exactly one step higher, and she was smiling. But in my photo gallery, a new image had been added, me standing at the bottom of the stairwell. Behind me, another version of me standing exactly one step higher, and she was smiling.